The streets are absolutely on fire right now, and the internet is losing its collective mind, because the situation surrounding King Von's legacy just took a turn that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. We thought we had seen every angle of this beef, we thought the lines were drawn in permanent ink, but today, the game changed forever. King Von's mother has officially reached her breaking point, and she isn't just talking. She is exposing every single secret that the industry has been trying to bury for years. This isn't just another internet rumor or a clickbait headline. We are talking about raw, unfiltered receipts that link Lil Tim, Lil Durk, and the entire NBA YoungBoy crew in a web of betrayal that is so deep, it's threatening to tear the entire rap world apart at the seams. Fans are shocked, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife as the narrative we've been told for years begins to crumble in real time. Imagine the person who knows the most, the woman who carried the legend, finally deciding that enough is enough and pulling back the curtain on the behind-the-scenes deals and the fake love that has been circulating since that tragic night in Atlanta. The energy is shifting, and the Long Live Von movement is entering a dangerous new chapter where loyalties are being tested and supposed brothers are being called out by name. If you thought you knew what happened between O'Block and 4KT, you need to clear your head and listen closely, because what Von's mom just revealed is about to send shockwaves through the feds, the labels, and the streets alike. This is the moment where the truth becomes more dangerous than the fiction. The situation escalated to a whole new level of intensity when Von's mother decided to go live on a private platform that quickly leaked to the rest of the world, and her eyes were filled with a mix of pain and pure rage that we have never seen before. She started off by holding up a stack of documents and old burner phones, claiming that she had finally unlocked messages that were sent leading up to that fateful night in Atlanta, and she didn't hold back on any names. The first person she targeted was Lil Tim, and she claimed that the narrative of him just defending his friend was a complete lie orchestrated by higher powers to keep the beef alive for streams and profit. She looked directly into the camera and said that Tim was in communication with people he should have never been talking to weeks before the incident even happened. The chat was moving so fast you couldn't even read the comments as people were losing their minds over the implications of what she was saying. She described a secret meeting that allegedly took place in a neutral city where members of the NBA YoungBoy crew were seen talking to individuals who were supposed to be loyal to the O'Block circle. According to her, these individuals were playing both sides and feeding information about Von's location and his mental state to the opposition just to stir the pot. She claimed that the industry thrives on the blood of young black men and that her son was a sacrifice for a much larger game that involved record labels and distribution deals that needed a viral tragedy to boost quarterly earnings. The air in the room seemed to get heavier as she began to play voice notes that sounded eerily like familiar voices in the industry discussing logistics and security details that were suspiciously absent on the night Von was taken from us. She was shaking as she spoke about the betrayal of the no-standards lifestyle where money is valued over brotherhood, and she specifically pointed out that some of the people wearing Long Live Von chains were the same ones who were texting the other side behind closed doors. Fans were shocked as she started naming specific associates who have been seen in recent music videos acting like they are sliding for Von, while she claims they are actually on the payroll of the very people who celebrated his downfall. The emotional weight was unbearable when she started talking about the letters Von wrote her expressing his distrust of the people closest to him, and how he felt like a target not just from his enemies but from his own circle. She described how Durk and Von had a conversation just 48 hours before the shooting that wasn't about music or money, but about a deep-seated feeling that something was wrong in the camp. She accused certain members of the Only the Family collective of being silent witnesses to the setup, and she challenged them to come forward and look her in the eye if they had any dignity left. Her voice cracked when she mentioned that YoungBoy's crew had been taunting the family with cryptic messages and that she had proof of direct deposits made to people in Chicago from accounts linked to associates in Utah. The narrative was shifting from a simple street beef to a massive conspiracy involving corporate greed and deep-seated jealousy that spanned across multiple states. She claimed that the security guard on duty that night was paid to look the other way, and that the police reports were missing key testimonies from people who saw exactly who pulled the strings. As she continued to vent her frustration, she started showing photos of leaked DMS where people were joking about the hit before it even happened, which sent the internet into a complete frenzy. The tension between the Midwest and the South has always been high, but this was like throwing gasoline on a bonfire that was already out of control. She shouted that she was no longer afraid of the consequences because she had already lost her world, and she wanted the world to see the snakes for who they truly are. She then turned her attention to the NBA Youngboy crew, specifically claiming that their bravado was built on a foundation of lies and that they didn't do anything without the permission of people in suits who managed their legal troubles. She described a protection for information trade-off where certain artists were allowed to stay out of jail as long as they kept the violence trending on social media. The level of detail she was providing was frighteningly specific, and it felt like she was reading from a script of a movie that was actually a real-life nightmare. Friends of Vaughn started joining the live, and the comments were split between people supporting her and people telling her to stay safe because she was saying too much. But she wouldn't stop, and she started detailing a specific phone call she intercepted where a prominent member of the Atlanta scene was discussing how to clean up the crime scene before the investigators could find the real evidence. She was crying now, but it wasn't a weak cry, it was the cry of a mother who was ready for war, and she promised that this was only the beginning of the exposure. The room she was in was dimly lit, which added to the eerie feeling of the broadcast, and you could hear people in the background trying to get her to turn off the camera. But she pushed them away and insisted that the world needed to know the truth about the industry's role in her son's death. She claimed that Lul Tim was just a pawn in a much bigger chess match and that the real kings were sitting in office buildings in Los Angeles and New York laughing at the chaos they created. She spoke about how the algorithm favors the violence and how the digital footprints of the killers were being erased by hackers hired by the labels to protect their assets. The betrayal felt personal to everyone watching as she described the fake tears at the funeral and the way people used her son's name to sell merchandise while she struggled to get the truth from the authorities. The energy was so raw that even the biggest skeptics were starting to believe that there was a much darker side to the story than what the blogs had reported over the last few years. She mentioned a specific bag of money that was dropped off at a location in Savannah just days after the shooting, and she challenged anyone to prove that it didn't come from a shell company used to mask illegal transactions. The accusations were flying, and the names were dropping like flies as she systematically dismantled the reputation of some of the biggest stars in the game. She finished this segment by saying that she had a hard drive full of data that would lead to arrests if the right people were watching, and she looked at the lens with a piercing gaze that felt like it was looking into the souls of the guilty parties. The internet was officially broken, and every major news outlet started picking up the clips as the reality of the situation began to sink in that the war was no longer just in the streets, but was now being fought in the court of public opinion with the highest stakes imaginable. As the screen flickered and the connection started to get spotty, she screamed out one last warning to Dirk, telling him that his silence was the loudest confession of all, and that she knew exactly what he was doing on the night the world stopped for her. The stream cut to black for a second before coming back even stronger as she prepared to dive even deeper into the specific evidence against the 4KT crew, and how they allegedly coordinated with the O-Block traders to ensure there would be no escape for Vaughn that night in the parking lot. The screen flickered back to life, and Vaughn's mother looked even more determined than before as she gripped her phone with both hands and began to detail the secret alliance that she claims existed between the NBA Youngboy crew and a small faction of people from Vaughn's own neighborhood who felt overshadowed by his massive success. She explained that jealousy is a silent killer and that the tensions began long before the night in Atlanta, when members of the 4KT crew started sending encrypted messages to individuals in Chicago who were looking for a way to get ahead. She claimed that these individuals were tired of being in Vaughn's shadow and were easily manipulated by promises of music features and financial backing from the opposition if they provided key intelligence. She described a specific incident where a member of the Youngboy crew was spotted in a residential area of Chicago that should have been off-limits, but he was escorted by people who were supposedly Vaughn's brothers. According to her, this was the moment the plan was solidified and the coordination began to move into the final stages. She spoke about how the NBA Youngboy crew used their social media presence to bait Vaughn into a state of hypervigilance while the people in his own circle worked to lower his physical security. She mentioned that on several occasions Vaughn's regular security detail was rotated out for no apparent reason and replaced by guys who had no experience in high-stakes protection. She called out the management for allowing this to happen and accused them of being complicit in the lack of safety protocols that led to the tragedy. The drama intensified when she started reading out a series of text messages that she claimed were recovered from a cloud account belonging to a close associate of the 4KT movement. The messages discussed the specific layout of the club where the incident occurred and noted the locations of the cameras and the exits with a level of precision that only someone with inside knowledge could provide. She claimed that the NBA Youngboy crew didn't just stumble into that confrontation, but that they were waiting for the perfect moment when they knew Vaughn would be most vulnerable and least protected. She described the emotional conflict of watching people she treated like family turn around and celebrate behind closed doors when the news broke. She specifically mentioned a party that allegedly took place in a hidden location, where members of both sides were seen drinking together and laughing about how they had successfully navigated the fallout without getting caught. The fans in the comments were divided, with some calling her a grieving mother who was seeing ghosts and others pointing out that the details she was providing matched up with timeline gaps that the media never addressed. She didn't care about the doubters and continued to reveal how Lul Tim was supposedly given a massive payout through a series of offshore accounts to ensure his loyalty, and to keep him from talking to the feds about who really gave the order. She claimed that the beef was a smokescreen for a sophisticated racketeering operation where the violence was used to manipulate the stock prices of the companies associated with the artists. She spoke about the personal stakes of losing her son and how the industry tried to buy her silence with a settlement offer that she refused to sign. She described the meetings with high-powered lawyers who told her that pursuing the truth would be dangerous for her health, but she said she had nothing left to lose. The narrative then shifted to a heated argument she had with a prominent member of the Only the Family crew who came to her house to try and convince her to stop talking. She said he looked her in the eyes and told her that some things are better left in the dark for the sake of the brand, but she kicked him out and told him that her son's soul was worth more than any brand. She accused this individual of knowing exactly what was going to happen in Atlanta and intentionally staying behind to avoid being caught in the crossfire. The betrayal felt even deeper as she described how Vaughn had recently helped this person with a legal bill only to be sold out for a fraction of the cost. She then brought up the role of the NBA Youngboy crew in the aftermath, claiming they used their influence to blackball anyone who tried to speak the truth about what happened that night. She said that the 4KT associates were actively threatening witnesses and paying off people to change their stories before the grand jury could hear them. She mentioned a specific witness who disappeared shortly after giving a preliminary statement, and she hinted that the reach of the 4KT crew was much further than anyone realized. The crowd watching the live stream was reaching record numbers as word spread that she was naming names that usually stayed in the shadows. She described the reaction of the fans as a double-edged sword because while the support was there, the trolls were also attacking her and telling her to let it go. She responded by saying that a mother's love never lets go and that she would spend every last cent she had to bring the real killers to justice, even if they were the ones the world loved to listen to on the radio. She spoke about the psychological warfare that was being used against the family, including prank calls and packages being sent to her house containing items that belonged to Vaughn on the night he died. She claimed this was a tactic by the NBA Youngboy crew to intimidate her into silence, but it only made her more vocal. She then turned her focus back to the logistics of the shooting and claimed that the car that Lul Tim was in was actually registered to a company that had direct ties to a major industry executive who has been working with both sides of the beef. She suggested that the executive was the middleman who facilitated the communication between the O-Block traders and the 4KT shooters. This revelation sent shockwaves through the industry because it implied that the labels were directly involved in the hit. She described the atmosphere in the industry as a shark tank where the biggest predators feed on the talent and then discard them when they become too difficult to manage. She said Vaughn was becoming too independent and was planning to start his own label, which would have taken millions of dollars away from the people currently in control. She claimed his death was a business decision made in a boardroom and executed in a parking lot. The emotional intensity was at an all-time high as she shared a story about a dream she had where Vaughn told her exactly who to look out for, and she said every name he mentioned has since shown their true colors. She described the internal conflict within the family camp where younger members want to retaliate but are being held back by the older heads who are allegedly in on the deal. She called the older heads cowards and said they were trading their young soldiers' lives for a seat at the table with the elites. She mentioned that the tension is so high in the city right now that another explosion of violence is inevitable unless the truth is fully exposed. She pleaded with the fans to stop fueling the fire by picking sides in a fake war and to start demanding accountability from the labels that profit from the carnage. She said the 4KT crew and the family traders are two sides of the same coin and both are responsible for the hole in her heart. She ended this part of the broadcast by showing a clip of a music video where a subtle hand signal was used that she claims was a coded message confirming the hit was successful. The level of detail was staggering, and the world was left wondering how much more she had in her arsenal as she prepared to transition into the next phase of her exposure, which promised to bring even more heat to the doorsteps of the most powerful people in the rap game. The energy in the digital room reached a fever pitch as Vaughn's mother took a deep breath and began the third part of her revelation, focusing on the specific breakdown of trust that happened within the walls of the inner circle during the final weeks of Vaughn's life. She described a secret group chat that she discovered which included members of the NBA Youngboy crew and a few individuals from the Family camp, where they were actually discussing the potential for a peace summit. That was really a trap designed to get Vaughn in a vulnerable position without his usual heavy security. She claimed that the narrative of a spontaneous fight outside the club was a total fabrication, and that the 4KT affiliates had been tailing Vaughn's SUV for over 3 hours before the confrontation even began. She looked into the camera with tears streaming down her face and said that Vaughn had actually called a close friend in Chicago just 30 minutes before the incident, expressing his concern that he was being followed by cars he didn't recognize. She accused the person on the other end of that phone call of telling Vaughn to relax and that he was just being paranoid, even though that person knew exactly who was in those cars. She described the sheer coldness of the NBA Youngboy crew as they allegedly monitored the police scanners in Atlanta to ensure that their getaway path was clear before Lil Tim ever stepped out of the vehicle. She claimed that the coordination was so precise that it had to have been practiced, and she pointed to a series of cryptic social media posts made by 4KT members days prior that featured maps and location tags of the very street where the shooting took place. Fans were gasping in the comments as she detailed how a certain high-ranking member of the Chicago scene had allegedly received a brand new luxury watch as a gift from an anonymous source in Louisiana just 48 hours after Vaughn was pronounced dead. She called this the blood price for the location drop, and she challenged the individual to show the receipt for that watch if it was truly a legitimate purchase. The drama shifted when she started talking about the role of the labels again, claiming that they had taken out a massive life insurance policy on Vaughn just months before his passing, which listed a shell company as the primary beneficiary instead of his children or his mother. She said she discovered this when she tried to settle his estate and found a mountain of paperwork that had been forged with her son's signature. She described the heartbreak of realizing that her son was worth more to the industry dead than alive, and she accused the NBA Youngboy crew of being the executioners for a corporate hit. She then turned her attention to Lil Tim, specifically claiming that he has been hiding out in a safe house provided by a major record executive, and that the legal fees for his defense are being funneled through a network of non-profit organizations to keep the money trail hidden from the public eye. She said she had a source within the legal team who confirmed that the defense was being coached on exactly what to say to make it look like self-defense, even though the surveillance footage that the public hasn't seen shows a different story of premeditation. She described a scene of absolute chaos where Vaughn's friends were seen running away instead of helping him, and she claimed this was because they were told by the traders in the group that the police were already on the way to arrest everyone. She said the abandonment of her son in his final moments was the ultimate betrayal, and she named the specific people who hopped in their cars and sped off while Vaughn was still breathing on the pavement. The reaction of the fans was one of pure disgust as they began tagging the artists and associates she was mentioning, demanding a response. She didn't stop there and began to detail how the 4KT crew had been gloating in private messages to Vaughn's sister, sending her photos of the crime scene that were never released to the media just to taunt the family and keep them in a state of constant trauma. She claimed that NBA Youngboy himself had a direct hand in overseeing the social media campaign to smear Vaughn's name after his death, to ensure that his legacy was tarnished and his record sales would eventually drop in favor of the competition. She described a meeting in Utah where the strategy was allegedly discussed to keep the Chicago versus Savannah beef alive for at least 3 more years to maximize the engagement on streaming platforms. She said the industry treats these young men like gladiators in a digital arena, and the fans are just spectators watching the carnage for entertainment while she is left picking up the pieces of a broken family. She spoke about the internal conflict she felt about coming forward because she knew it would put a target on her back, but she said the spirit of her son was restless until the whole truth was told. She then brought up a shocking piece of evidence regarding a leaked audio recording of a phone call between a 4KT associate and a person inside the Atlanta Police Department, where they were discussing how to handle the ballistics report to favor the self-defense narrative. She claimed that the corruption goes all the way to the top and that the NBA Youngboy crew has friends in high places who are protecting them from the full weight of the law. She described the pain of watching her son's enemies grow richer and more famous while his children are left asking why their father isn't coming home. The emotional stakes were elevated as she talked about the letters of apology she received from some of the people involved who are now feeling the guilt and want a flip on the leaders of the operation. She said she has been recording every conversation and that she has enough evidence to fill a library of betrayal. She accused Dirk of being too scared to move against the 4KT crew because he knows that they have dirt on him that could end his career in an instant. She claimed that the NBA Youngboy crew has a vault of videos and recordings of various artists doing things that would destroy their reputations, and they use this as leverage to keep everyone in line. She described the whole industry as a giant blackmail ring where nobody is safe and everybody is a pawn. She mentioned a specific incident at a recording studio where Vaughn was allegedly drugged just weeks before his death to make him appear unstable and erratic to his fans and his label. She claimed this was part of a character assassination plot to make his eventual death seem like a result of his own reckless behavior rather than a calculated assassination. The fans were left in a state of shock as the layers of the conspiracy were peeled back one by one, revealing a world of shadows and deceit that most people couldn't even imagine. She finished this part by addressing the 4KT crew, directly telling them that their time was running out and that the truth is a force of nature that cannot be stopped. She said she wasn't looking for revenge in the streets but for justice in the light of day where everyone could see the monsters for who they really are. The screen started to glow with a strange intensity as she prepared to enter the final part of her testimony, promising to reveal the final piece of the puzzle that would link every single player together in a way that would make it impossible for anyone to deny the truth any longer. And the world waited with bated breath for the conclusion of the most dramatic livestream in the history of the culture. The atmosphere felt like it was on the verge of a total meltdown as Vaughn's mother leaned closer to the camera for the final chapter of this exposure, and her voice dropped to a whisper that felt more terrifying than her shouting, because she was about to drop the final name that would tie the whole web together. She claimed that the ultimate betrayal didn't just come from the streets or the labels but from a secret alliance formed between the 4KT leadership and a figure so close to the O-Block power structure that it would make the fans' heads spin. She described how this individual had been playing the role of a peacemaker while secretly funneling Vaughn's travel itineraries to a middleman in Savannah, who then passed them directly to the NBA Youngboy associates. She said she found a burner phone in Vaughn's old gym bag that contained a series of frantic messages from the night of the incident where this mystery person was telling Vaughn to go to that specific club even though Vaughn had originally planned to stay at the hotel. She claimed that the setup was so deep that even the parking spots were prearranged to ensure that Vaughn would have to walk past the 4KT vehicles to get to the entrance. She looked straight into the lens and accused the industry of creating a death pool where executives actually bet on which rappers will be the next to go. And she said her son was the top of that list because he wouldn't play ball with the secret societies that run the entertainment world. She described a chilling phone call she received just hours after the shooting from a blocked number where a distorted voice told her to keep her mouth shut if she wanted to see her grandchildren grow up. And she said that was the moment she realized this was much bigger than just a beef between two rappers. She spoke about the psychological trauma of seeing Lil Tim walking around free, and she claimed that his legal immunity was part of a deal he made to testify in a completely separate federal case involving high-level racketeering that the NBA Youngboy crew is trying to avoid. She said that the 4KT movement is being protected by the authorities because they are acting as informants on the rest of the industry, and that Von was the only one who was going to expose the ratting. The tension in the chat was at an all-time high as she started showing bank statements of a popular DJ who she claims was paid $50,000 to keep the NBA Youngboy tracks on heavy rotation while deleting any tributes to Von from the radio airwaves. She described the systemic erasure of her son's impact and how the family was left divided because some relatives were offered record deals to keep quiet while others like her were left out in the cold. She detailed a final heated argument she had with a member of Dirk's team where she was told that the truth would hurt the city and that she needed to be a team player for the sake of the Chicago movement. She screamed that she doesn't care about the city or the movement if it's built on the blood of her child. And she claimed that the O-Block gates are being guarded by people who sold their souls to the opposition for a chance at fame. She then brought up a specific detail about the gun used in the shooting, claiming it was a clean weapon provided by an out-of-state source that has ties to a security firm used by several major rap stars. She suggested that the 4KT crew didn't even bring their own weapons but were supplied on-site to avoid interstate trafficking charges. The betrayal felt like a heavy weight on the hearts of every viewer as she described how Von's jewelry was allegedly stolen not by the killers, but by the people who were supposed to be guarding him in the hospital. She said the greed she witnessed was demonic and that the NBA Youngboy crew has been laughing about the situation in private Discord servers where they share memes about the murder. She claimed to have access to those servers and promised that the screenshots she has would lead to a complete cancellation of several major artists if the public saw the level of disrespect. She spoke about the resolution of her soul, saying that she no longer fears the shadows because she has brought the light, and she challenged Lil Tim, Dirk, and Youngboy to a live moderated debate where she would present her evidence to the world. She described the reactions of the fans as the only thing keeping her going, but she warned them that the industry is trying to manipulate their emotions to start a real-world war that will only result in more mothers losing their sons. She claimed that the feds are watching this very live stream and that she has already handed over a duplicate of her hard drive to a legal team outside of the country to ensure the information survives even if something happens to her. She spoke about the personal stakes of being a mother in this industry and how she feels like she failed Von by not pulling him out of the game sooner, but she said her final mission is to make sure his name stands for truth rather than just another statistic in a rap war. She mentioned that the 4KT crew has been trying to reach out to her recently with hush money disguised as a college fund for Von's kids, but she told them to keep their dirty money and that the only thing she wants is a full confession. The emotional intensity was so high that the screen seemed to vibrate with her words as she concluded the body of her statement by saying that the masks are finally off and the world can see the monsters for who they really are. She ended this segment by playing a final short clip of Von laughing in a studio just days before his passing, and she said that laugh would haunt the dreams of the traitors until the day they meet their maker. The internet was left in a state of absolute shock, and the fallout from this stream was already beginning to trigger emergency meetings at record labels across the country as the truth began to dismantle the most profitable beef in the history of modern hip-hop. This is a situation that is literally changing by the second, and we want to know exactly where you stand after hearing these heavy accusations from Von's mother because the streets and the internet are clearly divided. Do you believe that the receipts she is holding are the smoking gun that finally exposes the truth behind the betrayal, or do you think this is just a mother's grief manifesting as a conspiracy theory against the biggest names in the game like Dirk and NBA Youngboy. The tension is at an all-time high, and your voice matters in this conversation, so make sure you drop a comment below and let us know if you think Lul Tim and the 4KT crew were really part of a much larger industry setup, or if this was just a tragic case of street politics gone wrong. If you want to stay updated on every single development in this story, because we are tracking the labels and the legal teams as they scramble to respond, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a breaking update. We are dedicated to bringing you the raw and unfiltered truth that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch, so make sure you like this video to show your support for the search for justice. Share this video with everyone you know who follows the culture, because the world needs to see these revelations before they are scrubbed from the internet by the powers that be. What do you think will happen next? Will the feds actually step in, or will this be swept under the rug like so many other tragedies in the rap world? Stay tuned to the channel for the next update, because this story is far from over and the fallout is going to be massive.